method called thermal treatment. There is data that thermal treatment has been done in one way or the other, different parts of Europe, like 100 years or something. But I'm going to talk about a specific method that was developed in Finland in the 80s. There's this particular fire chief who came up with the idea to treat wood with heat, and the idea was to make environmentally friendly children's outdoor toys, basically climbing centers and things like this, and it wouldn't be impregnated wood. That was his idea. That could he do that, because this guy knew a lot about wood and burning. He was a fire chief, and he looked at it from a different perspective. He knew what happens to wood when it burns, and to how to make it stop burning. You have a container, you put wood in it, and you heat it up to 200 degrees. And if that's all you do, if you just heat it up, it's going to start burning after a while, because it's hot enough. When you raise the humidity content in the container to 100%, it won't burn anymore. So instead of that, we'll start sort of a process that you could compare to sort of like a steam boiling. For us Finnish people, there's maybe, I don't know about this, maybe this is just my speculation, but that there's one sort of natural way of thinking what's going on that is not so natural maybe to other cultures, is that we have sauna in Finland. We have lots of saunas. We have every apartment house, a lot of apartments, every apartment has a sauna. I'm not kidding, it's true. So it's like, when you go to sauna, you start sweating, you cleanse your skin and your pores. It's different kind of cleansing than shower. Those of you who have gone to sauna maybe know, but it's like something that you feel very different. And this is actually not so far away what happens in wood. There happens other things also with the thermal treatment, and the temperatures are higher than the Finnish sauna. But this sweating thing is a very good example or a good comparison, because that is actually one thing that happens in the wood, that when you heat it like that, and when you have that steam boiling going on there, and you have the pores in the wood, they will cleanse. When you cut down a tree, the pores of the wood, where the water and the what's the word for that? Minerals and everything travels up and down the trunk of the wood. When you cut down the tree, it's a lot of that stuff there in the pores. And what is happening to that wood, when it ages, like when you age, when you kind of like season, you talk about seasoning wood, seasoning Tonewood. One of the things that happens when seasoning wood is that, basically seasoning means that you have it kind of like outdoors, placed, the wood placed outdoors in a air-conditioned way, that the air gets to go around the planks, but it doesn't get wet, so you have a roof on top. But seasoning means that the wood can be in the winter and the summer for several years. It kind of dries in a very relaxed manner, and during that seasoning and aging, decades of time, like long term of time, these pores get clean again. And this is one of those things that happens in thermal treatment, like within 48 hours, the pores get clean. And, well, yeah, there's the first oven of this fire chief. That one actually exploded. It looks like it's about to, I think. But it seriously exploded. And there happened to be so that a little bit about the history, that this guy, the fire chief, and then he just happened to live in the same town as the headmaster of the guitar making school of Finland, Rauno Nieminen, is from, and they were sort of friends, and this fire chief started talking about this method that he's been working on, and there was some electronic microscope pictures of you know, that what happens in spruce thermal treatment in the cells of the wood. And then Rauno was this headmaster of the guitar making school. He remembered seeing in the Strat magazine electronic microscope pictures of 17th century violins, spruce tops. And he kind of like remembered that image immediately, that it looks kind of similar, that this could be interesting for musical instruments. He became interested in it, and they started working on the idea that what if this would be made into, or at least like researched if this would be something useful for musical instruments. And yeah, so they did a lot of study, and it culminated in when was it? Between years 1998, 2002, there was a big research. I was part of it. There was a technical university part of it, and the guitar making school, and this fire chief who had this scary-looking container that he was working with at the time, and a lot of us, those guitar makers, violin makers, even I think 1 or 2 church organ makers who use really big chunks of wood, and they were interested in what happened. Could they get more stable wood, for example, through this process? So a lot of us companies were involved in it, and we sent wood to be treated in this way. And the school and the university did all sorts of tests. The actual effects, what's going on in the wood. This is all now sort of, it's like researched facts that, and it's measured in a number of ways what's going on in the wood. So there you already see there's the stability increases. It means that, you know, when you have a guitar, and typically you have a guitar over winter to summer, and there's the normal sort of liveliness in the guitar neck, you know. It's normal for a guitar, and acoustic guitar top, the same thing. That it's normal that they move a little bit. That's why you have the truss rod in an electric guitar or steel string acoustic guitar to adjust that, to kind of, you know, get rid of that movement. You just adjust it a little bit, and then you're fine again. There's a specific reason why the stability increases with the thermal treatment, because after the treatment, the how do you say, the relative humidity inside the wood, it gets lower, and it gets like, the wood just doesn't suck moisture to it in the way that it did before the treatment. It just doesn't want to suck it in it anymore. Even though it would be very moist outdoors, it's very much slower process that the thermotreated wood kind of takes the moisture in. And also the cell walls harden. It's also to do with what happens in the thermal treatment, because it sort of, there are resins in wood that crystallize, or some of it vaporizes and sort of like cleans inside out, and the cell walls get harder, and as I already mentioned, the pores clean up. Yeah, and the stiffness meaning the bend strength. Let's take a guitar neck, which is it's a pretty small piece of wood that is supposed to hold back against pretty much tension. Let's say that steel string acoustic guitar or electric guitar strung with, you know, 011 strings, you would have there, you know, it's kind of like you would have there this 70 kilo person, you know, hanging on the neck all the time, you know, pulling the neck down, pulling the neck to the direction of the bridge. And the neck is supposed to withhold against that pressure. And the better the bend strength you have, there's, of course, I mean, you want to have a stiff neck for several reasons. You want to have a stiff neck so that it wouldn't, you know, when you're moving your playing position, you go down on your couch, you don't want your guitar to be in different tuning. With a very loose neck, it's like, you know, the tuning changes when you go like that. You get up, the tuning changes again. Another even more important reason to have a stiff neck is that every part of the guitar has there are resonance peaks, meaning that there are certain frequencies, certain resonances that, when you hit that frequency, certain part of the guitar starts vibrating more. It's like, it's common sense. You have any piece, it has a tap tone, ding, and the neck has a tap tone. It's kind of related to the tap tone, and the bend strength is related to that, because the better, the stronger and the stiffer you have your guitar neck, the less you're going to have problems with these peak resonances. Because whenever you hit the peak resonance in a guitar, what happens is that you take that note, let's say it's a G note, you take that, or you take A note 440 hertz. You take that note, and if you have a really strong resonance peak on your guitar neck at that specific frequency, that neck is going to start to vibrate, and it's the law of physics, it eats out the energy from the string, which means that that note will decay faster than the rest of the note. So it will be so-called dead spot. Ding, doesn't play long. The most dramatic problem instrument makers encounter this with is bass guitars, or instruments that are played with really low frequencies, because that movement is very big. It's very like energy consuming movement in the way that you typically would have in a bass guitar. You have these dead spots. This is one thing, when the stiffness of the neck increases, you get less of that problem. You won't get rid of having resonance peaks, because that would be a magic trick to make a neck that does not have a resonance peak. Even a neck made out of stone will have one. And there's more things. There is the sound velocity increases with the thermal treatment. This means that when you have a piece of wood and you put there these sensors to the ends of that piece of wood, and you send energy from one end to the other end. Sound velocity, how long does it take for the energy to travel from end to another? And this is one of those measurements that was done with those university researches, that sound velocity increases. And then there are a couple of more things. The wood color deepens and the weight drops.
How much?
How much what?
The weight.
The weight. Well, it says there slightly. It depends on the piece of wood, because the thing is that when you thermotreat a piece of wood, you need to know how dry is it before you treat it. If the wood is like 20% of humidity in the wood, and then you treat it, it's going to be considerably much. It could be like 30% lighter afterwards. But that's also, if you would have waited a couple of years with that piece of wood without treating it.
4% after you try.
That's right. Yeah. So that's what I mean. Because the thermal treatment, what it does is that it dries up the wood to 0%. It takes out everything. And then when you have it thermotreated, and afterwards you can't start using the wood until after, let's say, 4 to 5 months after, because it needs to reach back to the sort of balance humidity again. I think that the really interesting thing that resonated to a lot of guitar builders in Finland, and to me personally, was that with this research at the time, in the end of 90s, early 2000, was that all these things that you can read there, all that stuff is exactly what happens to a piece of wood when it ages 50 years. That's what happens. So that was kind of like are we looking at something like artificial aging of wood in the way that would make sense? You could have sort of like, it doesn't mean that you have a crappy piece of wood that the thermal treatment would transfer it magically into a great piece of wood. But it means that if you have a great piece of Tonewood and you do the thermal treatment, can you even get it better under considerably less amount of time? Because if I have that great wood laying there at my workshop, it's kind of pity if it's, you know, at its best, you know, 50 years from now. I'm going to be down under by then. You know, I would like it to be good faster.
And is there some bad side to the thermal treatment?
I can. Well, you can do the thermal treatment in so many different ways. It's about the one thing is that, you know, I don't own the patent. I don't own the rights. I don't even know exactly the sort of parameters, how they do it, the way they do it, because it's owned by, there is an association in Finland that owns it. Then there are member companies that do the thermal treatment. And most of those thermal treatment companies don't know how to treat musical instrument wood. And even the ones who do, there are certain challenges that we are facing, because these days it's very, very few of us builders in Finland who are using it. There would be more if it would be more readily available. But the fact is that why is it not available so easily is that I will have to have 10 cubic meters of maple or alder or birch or whatever I'm treating. I will have to have 10 cubic meters so that it will fill up their container. Because it's pretty costly. And if I send there, like, you know, I would need to thermal treat this, you know, this body. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. They're not going to. Well, they will do it for me, but it costs me 3,000 euros a month for that one. So it's not like viable. So yeah, there are challenges, and the thing is that through this research that was done, very good set of parameters were found. You know that when you don't do it higher than, you know, you do it like 180 degrees and less, it's good. And then the thermal treatment companies need to know the rest, how to adjust their system so that 180 degrees or whatever, that they get the stable good result. And yeah, we are, I think these days, there used to be an acoustic guitar factory in Finland called Landola, and they did it for their last maybe 5 or 6, 7 years, thermal treatment, because they found that it makes better guitars, less warranty problems. Why not then? You know, it's less warranty problems. So they did it, but for other reasons they don't exist anymore. So in the guitar field of guitar in Finland, there is mostly one-man companies, and a couple of them slightly bigger. We are 5 people in my company, so we are kind of, yeah, we can have the wood thermal treated for us, but every time it's a struggle, you know, to get the money for it, to get it done. But we see that it has so many good advantages for us that we've been stubborn, and we've been using it in our guitars for 15 years now, and it's really great. It's really great. Here in this picture you can see it says here spruce normal, spruce thermal treated, spruce 1898, and the picture, you know, these rings here, they are what is called ring-like pores. So they are kind of going sideways in the wood, and when you cut down a spruce tree, that's how it looks like. They are closed. Like if you think of a flute or a clarinet, it's like, you know, all those things are closed. And then when you have a 100 years old piece of spruce, they've opened. They are open when the wood is alive, but when you cut it down, they close. I don't know why, but that's what happens. So if you think of, you know, musical instrument, and you want, you know, that light, you want the air and everything, and why is the aged wood sounding often better? Maybe this could be one explanation, that there are these pores that are opening a long time. That's like a scientific fact. And then this is exactly the electron-microscopic picture I was talking earlier. That the thermal treated, it's the same thing starts. They start opening with the thermal treatment, and so you kind of get that. You get your clarinet, flute pores open again. What else? minerals. There's more scientific facts for you. So if you don't believe me, now you believe me. Look, there's all these nice charts about sound velocity, about the weight, or density in this case, and the change of humidity and how it works. Yeah, there was a lot of testing. There was measuring the change of weight, bench strength, sound velocity, resonance, density, porosity, elasticity. And this was very great because there was a lot of luthiers involved in that, and normally, of course, we wouldn't have had any access to such expensive toolery to find out, what is this technology exactly for, or good for. And in this research, there was not very many species of wood. There was spruce, alder, birch, and maple. And some tests were made with Spanish cedar, mahogany, rosewood, and ebony. It's kind of more exotic wood and more oily wood types, but it was never done enough so that it would give, like good enough proof, that I would dare to use it. I remember sending them some very expensive pieces of Spanish cedar, and they came back, as matchsticks. Here's your Spanish cedar. It's like it's totally broken, and I didn't have money to send them more. Yeah, keep on developing it for me. No, so yeah, we are using these certain wood types that are very well researched. That's the sound velocity meter, and that's the electronic microscope that you're using. They look like some hospital equipment, scary hospital equipment. Well, there you read it. Scientifically approved, but men in white coats showing scientific evidence don't convince the conservative guitar enthusiasts. Well, that's very, very true in the way that, I was the first time in my life, I was Frankfurt Music Messe exhibiting, and I was showing my guitars, and I had there two instruments. One sort of like Strat style guitar of mine, my design, that was non-thermotreated, and the other one was thermotreated, and I was like trying to prove to people, I had all this, data with me, and I was trying to prove them that, this is better. But I found out that that's not the way to convince anybody. It's a lot longer process than that, and I really, that's when the real work has started for me. We just used it. We just use it and use it and use it, and in the long run, we get lots of feedback that your guitars are stable and there's no warranty problems, and people are happy, and they start writing about it to forums. They start writing about it, testimonials to us and Facebook and whatever, and reviews. We get good reviews and all that stuff. So now, 15 years later, a lot of people believe me, and a lot of people, our clientele and our fans, they believe that there is something to it, because it's so, from guitar to guitar to guitar, it's very stable. And there are certain things that I've, one very simple example that will explain to you the core of thermotreatment from a guitar maker's point of view. Let's say that I would have a plate of maple, 5 millimeters thick plate of maple that could be, a top or a back or whatever it could become, but it could be like this big piece, very thin, and I would have that piece of a normally dried maple, and I would place it to my storage shelf. Let's say that it's glued and sanded. It's very well dried, and it's been there, like for 5 years, 10 years, before it was sanded and glued and made into this thin plank. And I put it to the storage shelf in the summer. And it's a fact that next winter it's going to be like this, or like this, or it has moved somehow. It just doesn't happen that I could have such a thin plate of wood for a long time without it moving, if I don't somehow tie it up, if I don't somehow force it to not move. I need to kind of tie it to this, staple it in the way that it won't move, and then it stays straight. But if I just put it to the storage or leave it on the table, if I leave, let's say that in the wintertime, if I leave such a plate of non-treated maple or whatever wood on a tabletop. In 1 week it will be like this, because the moisture content changes so much on top of the wood, it kind of sucks moisture, like moisture comes away from top of the wood, but not from the under the wood, because it's against the table. So it will be like this. And as a comparison to this, I have at my workshop, I have such plates of maple and such pieces of birch that have been thermotreated 15 years ago, and they are perfectly flat to this day. We don't need to tie it up, we don't need to do anything. It stays straight when we've done it. When we've planed it, when we put it, it just stays straight, and it's very nice for me to know that, because that gives me the safe feeling that, when I put it to my guitar, I know that it won't move. Especially in necks of my guitars, that's like really the crucial point. Nowadays they do it in places like that. Then you said that is there maybe problems with it or negative sides? Have you heard about roasted maple? That's something. It's a trade name for thermotreated wood in America. They use the name roasted maple, or somebody talks about caramelized wood. This is actually, it's the same technology that was exported to United States, or actually to Canada, in the end of 90s. One of these facilities, not the first kind, the crazy looking one, but one of these modern ones, with the sort of computer parameters and all that, was shipped to Canada from Finland by this fire chief who was really trying to make it into business, and on the way making it to business. And one facility was shipped to Canada at the end of 90s, and they, for a long time, I think they were using it for flooring and wood construction wood and stuff like that, which is the main use in Finland as well. Because it's like, you make better wood floors with it, you make better constructions with it, because they don't twist and they don't shrink anymore, so they stay better together. So that's why it's used for those more sort of commercial uses mainly. And in 2003 or 2004, there was a big article about us and our guitars in a small magazine called the Tonewood Report in the United States. Yeah, there was this article about thermotreatment and mentioning very clearly in the end of it that, that maybe hopefully one day this will be available in North America as well. And it's not very long after that I started noticing the roasted maple neck. Because this is the thing that, when you do the thermotreatment in the right way, the color doesn't really change that much. It looks a little bit tanned. It looks a little bit like, an old piece of wood would look like. It doesn't look like it's like, maple doesn't start looking like walnut. But you can do it that much. You can treat it in higher temperatures, 200 degrees, 220 degrees, and then it happens. The color changes very dramatically. But at that point also, the thing that the Americans apparently did not know, because they don't have this research to back them up. And the only research that exists is this thick university research done in Finnish language. It's not available. It's not available. There's the only thing that is available in English about this Finnish patent or the method is that Tonewood Report article that mainly talks about the effects, and it doesn't go deep because I can't go that deep in it. I don't know the details. I don't know the parameters. Because what happens in wood when you do it so much, so dramatically, it starts to break the cells. So there is the cell walls don't only harden, they also start breaking. So it gets really fragile. So an overdone piece of maple in a neck, I wouldn't dare to put it into my guitar necks because there is no way of knowing how it's going to be in 20 years when it's that fragile. It's not like normal. It doesn't, that sort of breaking of cells doesn't happen for a piece of wood that ages 50 years. It happens only when you artificially, treat it so much that it breaks. My sort of speculation is about maybe it's cool because the color changes, so you have a point. You have a visual point to show that it's different. Because in my guitars, you can hardly tell. I mean, it looks still like maple. It doesn't look like walnut. But yeah, that's about. So when you do it the right way, I don't think there's any sort of negative effects to the wood, because it basically does the same things as would happen to a normally aged 50 years, whatever, piece of wood. And the only, I would say that, the only difference is that, when you have a musical instrument that was built 50 years ago, and now that piece of wood, let's take, you have 1956 Strat, and that piece of wood has aged those 60 years, but at the same time it's been played for 60 years. So then you would kind of, if you make theories up, what are the actual effects, is that it's not exactly the same thing to make a guitar now, my guitar, you make it out of that thermotreated wood that kind of is identical more or less with that, like when you're measuring it, when you're measuring with scientific measures, it kind of appears to be very identical to that 1956 Strat body wood or neck wood. But that piece of mine hasn't been played when it was aged. It's been in that container for a few days and that's it. It's like a magic trick. And I've been thinking that the ideal way of making, musical instrument tone wood, that would be that during those few days when it's in the container, that you would, put there, these loudspeakers and Jimi Hendrix to that container for 3 days, and then maybe then, because when the treatment is happening and the wood would vibrate there like crazy during those days, maybe it would be better. But I don't know, it hasn't happened yet. I don't have enough torque, enough power, or money to make it happen, to do such crazy trials. But one last thing I would say, that when you think of, what happens to the tone, does it sound different? That's a very subjective, a very difficult thing to say. I've had a lot of professional guitarists over the years saying that yes, it sounds from scratch, it sounds from a new guitar, it sounds more like an old guitar, but I don't know. I really don't know. For me, that is not the main reason why I've kept using thermotreatment in my guitars for 15 years. The main reason is that it's more stable and I have less problems with it. That's really the reason. And that's why I know that there's this big church organ company in Finland that does it, for their big, huge organs, because those, if you have their movement in the wood, it's a disaster. You don't want that. So those guys are also using thermotreated wood. So it's really like serious business for them using that stuff, and they are like, thanking God for that invention. But for the tone, some feel that there is more. It's got to do something with I think with the mid register. If you think of a Strat, if you think of how an old Strat plays, a great old Strat plays, if you play it, it has a specific kind of mid register, lower mids that kind of cut through in the mix. And you kind of experience that guitar, that it sounds great because you can hear it in a band. It has very much to do with the mids. And when you have a new Strat, it's often so that the mids aren't playing so loud. It sounds very bright, and there's a lot of bass, but there's sort of like a scoop in the mids in a new guitar that then starts to improve over the years a bit. And a lot of players say about my guitars that it feels like there's more of the mids in the guitar, even though it's a new guitar. I don't know. But that was my sales pitch for my guitars. Now you can, if you have questions. If you have questions, we have maybe a few minutes. Yeah.
Do
do you still use adjustable truss rods or non-adjustable?
Yes,
truss?
we do use adjustable truss rods, and it is because these, I mean, the wood does not become immune to moisture. It moves less, but I feel that it's very important, and I would use like a double way truss rods that correct both ways, because we ship guitars to, you know, to North America, to Australia, to Singapore, to wherever in the world, with very different climates. And sometimes when a guitar goes to, you know, we'll build a guitar in Finland in the winter time, and the humidity indoors could be like under 20%. We have like a stabilized humidity in our workshop, so we get it up to like say 30, 35. But we can't really raise it higher than that in our environment. It just wouldn't work. You know, our windows would be like, you know, steaming water all the time, because it's, yeah. But we do sort of control our workshop climate a little bit. But still, you know, in the wintertime, if we have 35% relative humidity in our workshop, and we ship that guitar to Singapore to 90% humidity, we face still the problem that after a few months, even if it's thermotreated, it's going to move a little bit. So yeah, we always have truss rods.
Is it different when you're sanding the wood or drilling the wood, or it's the same?
Nearly the same. It smells a little bit different,
Yeah.
but other than that, it's quite good. When you have, that's actually one good point, that because I think you can buy some kind of thermotreated wood in Germany as well, and some builders are using that sort of very brown, dark brown maple and something, the caramelized, like I talk, the roasted wood. And when you have a piece of wood like that, when you plane that, it doesn't act like normal wood would act. Normally, when you plane maple, there's going to come these really nice curly pieces of wood, you know, out of that. But when you have this thermotreated, overly thermotreated wood, it will just, you will pull with the plane, and it just comes these little pieces that just break,
Like
because it's so brittle. Yeah, it's very brittle. So if it's overdone, yes, there's a big difference. But if it's done the right way, it feels a bit like, you know, it actually smells even a bit similar as you would have some really old piece of wood. You know, taken like from, you know, a piece of spruce from an old wall, 100 years old, and you do something out of it. You know, because once we did a guitar for a customer. They had an old house, a timber house, and they changed new windows. So they had some of the window panes, you know, and the guy came to my workshop with these huge chunks of old window panes, you know, really big ones. And he came that, you know, that these were taken out of his timber house, that he would like a guitar to be made out of it. And yeah, we made it. And I remember when we were working on the wood, that it has kind of the similar feel to our thermotreated wood. Yeah.
What about the the resonance peak? It should be higher.
Yeah, it is higher because, yeah, it gets higher. It gets higher because of the cell walls harden. Because always in a guitar, what you look for lightweight, and you look for, or I look for lightweight, and regarding finishes, I look for thin finishes that are hard. Because if I have like soft finishes, even like thin soft finishes, it's gonna, pardon the idiom, but it feels like a, you know, condom pulled over the guitar. You know, you have a piece of rubber and it just, you know, it just dampens the resonance of the guitar. And the same thing, you have a really thick finish, regardless if it's hard or soft, it's going to also not allow the wood to resonate. But the worst kind of finish would be very thick and very soft finish.
You nowadays use only thermotreated.
Well, for those species that are available, and those species that I know that work well, you know, because if I would want to, let's say we use a lot of Spanish cedar. That's one of our kind of trademark woods, you know, Spanish cedar for the bodies and for the necks. It's an exotic wood that is quite oily, and if I believe that we could maybe find a way to thermotreat it, but on the other hand, it's kind of like mahogany. very close to the, you know, the ways. The mahogany is also, it's really stable when it's well dried. It's really stable without. I mean, we've never had problems with Spanish cedar, so I don't see there like a reason that why I really should pursue in finding the thermal treatment way for it, because it seems like these light woods, less oily, like alder, birch, maple. Those are the woods that kind of gain most of the method, at least in the light of the research that is done 15 years ago. And then there's the problem that if we don't want to do more research, it would mean basically if there's nobody to fund it, it would mean that I should send, you know, my storage of Spanish cedar to be thermal treated and hope that it won't come back, you know, as sticks. And I just can't afford that. So I'm hoping that maybe in the coming years, because more research would be needed. At this point of time, it seems to be so that this type of thermal treatment that is done in Finland, nobody else uses in guitars that I do. So but I don't feel that I would, let's put it that way, that I would gain more from more builders using it, because it would be easier available for me too. So I don't need to keep it as a secret. There's no.
Well, it seems to me if you've got these people in your association, that would be a good source of perhaps the funding you can need, not necessarily for the testing you're doing,
Yeah.
but for the development of luthier-sized treatment.
Absolutely. That's that's one of the ideas that there's been one guy in Sweden, and there's been a few of us who've been kind of started to talk about it. That we could maybe, you know, find these kilns. Kiln means like a wood drying oven that cabinet makers use. So maybe we could find a, you know, comfortable sized kiln that we could modify in the way that could be used for this. So yeah, that's definitely an option to do. Yeah.
Does the aging process continue for thermo-treated wood, or is it so stable, so cooked that it's never going to move?
It's a good question. I don't really. I mean, I've been using it for 15 years, and I'm definitely getting that you know, our new guitar and our 10 years old guitar. You know, the 10 years old guitar sounds better. It sounds more open. So it still like opens in the way that normally a guitar would. So in that way, I would say that out of my subjective experience, yes, it continues.
Mm-hmm.
But there hasn't been done any measurements to these instruments that were built 15 years ago and measured then. It hasn't been done now, so it's basically, you know, it's my subjective gut feeling about it. Yeah, it's better now. Having a community of guitar makers and whoever, you know, any of you guys could join our association as support members. If there's people, enthusiasts who want to sort of, you know, join our effort of, you know, making the world a better place and finding the Holy Grail, you know, that's what we're all after here. That's the symbol of the show, name of the show, you know. We're after the Holy Grail. We just want to make the better and the better and the better guitar. Yeah. We're done.